logo stitched across the chest. It looked as if it belonged to a superhero rather than a 16-year-old high schooler. The polyester fabric caught the dim light filtering into his room, giving it an almost magical glow. He ran his thumb over the patch, shaking his head in disbelief. In just a few hours, he'd be at Crypto.com Arena for his first shift. His first job. And not just any job. Working at the very stadium where the players he idolized came alive on the court. The sound of a chair scraping across the kitchen floor broke Ethan's reverie. He set the uniform down carefully, folding it neatly, then walked down the narrow hall. He paused when he saw his mom, Mrs. Carter, sitting at the small kitchen table. Her shoulders sagged slightly, and her fingers rubbed at the circles under her eyes. She'd just come off a long night shift at the hospital, still wearing her scrubs. A coffee mug steamed in front of her, but she hadn't taken a sip. "Hey, Mom," Ethan greeted. He tried to sound cheerful. "You're up early." She looked up and offered a tired smile. "Couldn't sleep. I wanted to see you off before your first day." Her voice was warm but laced with that same weary note that Ethan had grown used to over the years. "Thanks." He stepped closer, hesitating before asking, "How's Lily doing?" "She's still sleeping. Yesterday was a little rough with her breathing, but the inhaler helped." Mrs. Carter glanced at the fridge, where a handwritten note reminded them to pick up more medication. "She'll be okay." Ethan nodded, feeling the familiar knot of responsibility tighten in his chest. His little sister's asthma had always been a worry. And with money tight, every trip to the pharmacy felt like walking a financial tightrope. That's part of why he had taken this job. The extra income would help cover the rising costs of Lily's treatments. And maybe, just maybe, make things a little easier on their mom. "You're going to do great," Mrs. Carter said suddenly, reaching out to squeeze his arm. Her smile brightened, and for a moment, the dark circles under her eyes seemed less noticeable. "Just remember, be polite, work hard, and always show up 15 minutes early. You're a Carter. You know how to give it your best." Ethan grinned. "I'll make you proud." "You already do," she replied. The bus ride to the arena felt surreal. Ethan sat by the window, watching the city come alive as the sun rose higher. Cars honked in the distance, and pedestrians moved with purpose along the streets. He pulled out his phone and quickly texted Lily, who had just woken up. "I'll text you during my break. Love you." The bus rumbled to a stop, and Ethan stepped off, staring at the imposing structure of the arena. He could see the massive screens outside, advertising the next home game. He adjusted his backpack strap and took a deep breath. This was it. Inside, the air was cooler, the smell of fresh popcorn and hot dogs already wafting through the hallways. He followed a security guard's directions to the employee entrance, where a stern-looking man with glasses and a clipboard waited. "Mr. Graham," his new supervisor. "Carter, right?" Mr. Graham asked without looking up. "You're early. That's good. First day jitters?" "No, sir. Just ready to get started." Ethan replied quickly. Too quickly. Mr. Graham raised an eyebrow. "Well, let's see if that enthusiasm holds. Follow me," he said, turning on his heel and striding through the maze of hallways. Ethan hurried to keep up, trying to memorize every turn. The kitchen area was a flurry of activity. Workers stacking trays, unloading boxes of snacks, and refilling soda dispensers. The smell of melting butter on popcorn made Ethan's stomach rumble. Rule number 1. Always wash your hands before handling food or drinks, Mr. Graham said, his voice clipped. Rule number 2. Keep your station clean and organized at all times. And the most important rule, he paused to give Ethan a sharp look, no special treatment for anyone. No autographs, no photos, and absolutely no exceptions. Break that rule, and you're out. Understood? Yes, sir. Good. Sophie will show you the ropes. Mr. Graham gestured to a woman about 10 years older than Ethan, who smiled warmly. Her name tag said, Sophie. "Don't let him scare you too much," she said, giving Mr. Graham a mock glare. He didn't react, simply jotting something down on his clipboard before walking off. "He's all bark and no bite," Sophie added in a lower voice. Ethan wasn't so sure, but he nodded politely. Sophie quickly showed him how to work the register, mix the special sports drinks, and restock ice. She pointed out little tricks, Like how to balance the cups just right so they wouldn't topple over and how to listen for the exact sound that meant the popcorn was perfectly popped. "You're catching on fast," she said as Ethan placed a perfectly stacked row of nacho trays into the warmer. "You'll be ready for game night in no time." By lunch break, Ethan felt more confident. He sat in the small employee break room, eating the sandwich his mom had packed. Pulling out his phone, he sent Lily another quick text. She responded immediately. "Have you seen LeBron yet?" Ethan chuckled and replied, "Not yet. But I'll keep an eye out." As the afternoon went on, Ethan continued learning the ropes. Customers trickled in for arena tours, and Ethan served them with a bright smile. He thought about what his mom had said, about showing up and doing his best. Every "thank you" and "have a nice day" brought him closer to his first paycheck. He had already decided, half would go to his mom for bills, and the other half would be saved for Lily's medicine. By closing time, Mr. Graham made his rounds, inspecting each station. When he reached Ethan's, he gave a smouncing on her heels. "No players today," Ethan said, ruffling her hair, "but just wait until game night." Later, after Lily went to bed, Ethan found his mom at the kitchen table. She was surrounded by a pile of bills, a calculator clicking in her hands. She looked up and smiled faintly. "So, how was your first day?" Ethan sat down and leaned back in his chair. "It was great. Mr. Graham said I did a good job. And Sophie showed me all these cool tips. I can even see part of the court from my station. It's better than I imagined." "That's wonderful, Ethan," his mom said. "I'm so proud of you." He felt a warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't just the job, or the chance to see his basketball heroes in person. It was the knowledge that he was helping. He was doing something that mattered, for Lily, for his mom, and maybe even for himself. As he got ready for bed, he looked at the uniform hanging neatly on the door. The moonlight caught the Lakers logo, making it glow. Ethan smiled to himself. This was just the beginning. Ethan woke up that morning with a strange mix of nerves and excitement.